Welcome back to For the Love of Humanity. This is the Harmonized Human episode part 2. And so I want to start off by saying I am someone who is drawn to teaching again and again. Bless my children for dealing with it. Everything's a teachable moment. It seems to be something I can't help but slip into. It's a role I'm very comfortable with. Um, I can't describe it other than it feels very innate. I'm also highly motivated by challenge solving. This seems to be where, when I have an opportunity to steer a conversation, and this is where it gets steered to. I was walking through the forest with my husband the other day, and we were talking about the intensity of our conversations sometimes, and the pattern of our conversations. And he was like, "Do you want to talk about something light?" And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I just kept noticing myself moving into challenge solving situations, challenge solving, or, when he was having a random conversation about um, his boots, and like next year he wants to get a different pair of winter boots because these ones are leaking and whatever. This is all irrelevant information, but I found myself in challenge solving mode, and the fact that he wasn't buying any boots this year was like, "Okay, I'm done talking about it." Like, if we're not solving the challenge now. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, how interesting. How interesting." And I'd love to, hone my, I don't want to call it small talk skills, but hone my skills in not necessarily attempting to problem solve so much. But I am highly motivated by it. It comes naturally to me, and I have deemed that there are truths that we all have access to getting. We all have a truth meter. We all have this ability, right? And this is something I ended on with the last episode. We all have this ability. We all have this ability for discernment. And trying to share knowledge is so interesting because it's subjective perspective, and we're trying to glean what is objective about this, what is worthy of sharing with other people in a way that they can use it. It can be useful to them or entertaining to them, or again, because I'm a problem solver by nature, I'm looking at what's the use value, what's the functionality, how can this help someone solve a challenge in their life. And so for me, I am highly motivated to find out how to give information for that function. So if we all have access to this, but some of us don't know how to connect up with our truth center, or we don't trust it, or we don't believe it when it shows us something, right? How then can I teach people to connect up with that, trust it, believe it, refine it, hone it, make a relationship with it, learn the language of it, whatever you want to say? And it's funny because this is the way I speak in these metaphors. Hone it, work with it. I'm hoping that if one way of explaining it hits with someone, that I'll say it from another perspective and another perspective, like looking at a diamond, and I'm shifting from each facet to facet to facet, and hoping that I land on several different metaphors and we cover all bases almost, right? So, how do we connect up with that center? How do we trust it? How do we believe it? The challenge is that the information is there, and it has been taught in many different ways. Like, there's information when you read Rumi, when we read Lao Tzu, when we read some of these more concise, more less wordy ways of getting a huge concept across. But interpretation is so vast on these things, and sometimes it doesn't land. Maybe we need a more current metaphor, right? So the challenge is, how do we make that information digestible without veering off the original meaning? And if the information is taught in many different ways, but becomes easy to dismiss because it's convoluted, it doesn't land. And then, you don't get to make use of it. So as a challenge solver teacher, I see the challenge presenting as presenting the information in a way that maintains the universal integrity while presenting enough metaphor, symbolism, and context, while also reaffirming the individual's ability to apply the information, see it as living and moving, and knowing context while reaffirming the individual's ability to apply the information, and knowing that it's dynamic in application is like the challenge. This is so they can see the and feel the frequency of truth. So I'm almost teaching in linguistics, teaching in words, concepts through metaphor, but also trying to give a flavor or trying to give a frequency of the truth and see the application of how the truth operates so that that person can sort of have that imprint and then locate a match inside that then becomes where they go to discern the information. So I'm giving the information, I'm asking them, how does that feel in your truth meter? How does your truth meter actually feel when you hear this? How does your truth meter translate this information to you? Are you starting to trust your truth meter? Do you feel what your truth meter feels like when it's talking to you? Can you feel your discernment and your intuition? Find that feeling inside. And then every time you're hearing information, run it through that system, run it through that area. So essentially, I'm teaching people information while at the same time making sure I'm honoring and really having them intentionally locate their truth center, their truth meter, their compass. So it's like their inner Google so that they can now always use that center when they're in tandem with their mind, in tandem with whatever they're taking information in, so that they know how that sits with them. So attempting to locate people's intuition with them, locate their internal guidance with them while sharing information that I feel helps. So the challenge is to show others how to understand the universal law and to find their governance or their guidance inside and learn how to interpret truths while understanding that truths are dynamic, and while understanding that while they locate these truths, knowing that the truth might be true for only a moment or the truth might be true enduring. And I know truths are true forever, right? However, somebody might really feel like something is true for them for a certain amount of time, and they may still be connecting subjective truth and objective truth. So, and also understanding that somebody else's truth is different from their truth. And that's more in the realm of perspective and opinion. And do you know what I mean? But to also understand, okay, so to see the nuance of truth and to really feel how truth feels in all ways. So some truths on the topic of truth, as I said last episode, I had a few trips away. I had some time to unwind and decompress and really give myself space and grace and all the things. And some truths have dropped in for me. And I share this because we all have access to these truths, to finding these truths for ourselves. You just have to find your way of asking, as I said, and trusting and discerning. And it's a skill set. And it takes what it takes for you to trust, believe, know, feel, get acquainted. Many have it, and you may have to decondition a little bit and stretch your perspective a little bit to hold this. We all can. Just we may not know how to get there. So have an open mind, but also use your intuition and your discernment. Try to stretch your perspective as I explain this information. And if it doesn't land right away, that's okay. If it doesn't land at all and it doesn't feel like this is helpful for you, that's okay too. You can pause, you can leave this episode be, but these are some things that landed for me, and I really feel that if I explain it and really open myself up to presenting it in a way that it's going to help people. So, here we go. How many are there of these? Let me just look. I've put 8 here, but obviously they're growing all the time. But this is what feels like foundational to me at this point, and this is what feels good to share at this point. Okay. So, number 1. And this isn't necessarily in any order, but who knows, it might reveal itself as having a really cool order. As of now, it just as it came to me, I just started, you know, writing them out. And these are things that I hold in tandem all the time, but I can't remember if I said it in this episode or the last episode. I'm finally able to deliver the information with a level of embodiment, knowingness. Like I've known these things for a long time, but for whatever reason, I was motivated and clear to feel through it and say it now. So one, we are entitled to our experience here on earth. We are entitled. Entitled. So don't sign that over to anyone else. We are entitled. We are entrusted. The deed to our life is ours by birthright, by being here, because we are here. That's our life is ours here. It's yours for you to live. Your perspective. You're given this body, you're given these senses, you're given this experience to live. Not so you can abdicate it and say, "Oh, I'll give that to someone else by proxy. You now make my decision. You do the, you know what I mean, like conservatorship." You know what I mean? So we are here to have a unique embodied experience. Otherwise, it would be like two to a body. Do you know what I mean? Like me and my pal over here both sharing the same body, same brain, and we fight over who gets to decide. Do you know what I mean? Like so far, what we understand of our experience right now is that we are here to have a unique embodied experience, and it is our right to do so. Our function, our purpose, our responsibility, even. It is our function to come here and have a lived experience that is individual, but we're in a collective soup as well. That's our purpose. Our purpose is to come here and have our unique experience into essence and live it our way. It's our responsibility to do that. Have you ever noticed that you can't really get out of doing it? And when you do try to sort of get out of doing it, things don't feel right. When you attempt to not do that, it feels a little messy. So we are here to live from our vantage. It's not a punishable test. There's not a moral test in the sense that we've been led to believe through religion and what we've been taught to be good, right? But there is an ethical aspect that is cultivated through our compassion and our wisdom that guides us. This is already a part of us. This isn't something that lords over us. This is part of our own internal compass and our own internal heart and our own internal compassion, right? We can grow our relationship with that so that it becomes louder and more forefront if that's not our main experience. Some people, that's their main experience. The compassion comes very easy. They have lots of empathy and they understand what other people's feelings are and they can understand what their impact on others is, right? But some of us have to grow that or really work with it to hear it or have it impact us. Or some of us have been so used to just externally going and doing and acting based on impulse or acting based on reaction that we're not fully aware of that guidance, right? But we have it. We all have it. And it's available to us to the degree that we open to it and expand to it and take more autonomy with it. That's one. We are all entitled to our experience here on earth. We're all equal in the sense that we are here. We get to have this experience. It is ours. Now, I know externally some of us may feel like my experience isn't my own. No, it's highly controlled. No, it's, on a base level. If that doesn't feel like it sits, leave it. Or if you're feeling, hey, I want to feel, what does that mean for me? Put it through your system. Feel it. What does it mean? And you'll start to see how that's a legitimate, we're here. It's obvious we're here, right? We're having this experience. So we are our own governor, and we are the ones who decide our perspective of suffering on an everyday level. Now, these all have caveats because nothing is solidified, stagnant. I shouldn't say nothing, but there's always caveats. So yes, we are the governor of our experience and we decide how we perspectivize, how we create perspective, create meaning, how we decide what's meaningful, how we decide what something means. We're the one directing our brain when we decide we're directing our brain instead of reacting to our external. And we choose to perspectivize suffering or enjoyment on the everyday level. And there are horrific things happening. There are atrocities. There are power dynamics that are beyond degrading and inhumane. I'm not acknowledging that. But for the purpose of this example, on the day to day, when we wake up and we do our human bodily things, like we wake up, we use the bathroom, we get a drink of water, our internal suffering of self imposed punishment is something we have the ability to transmute, transform, and we are responsible for refining that. If we are waking up every day miserable, we think the experience is horrible, we're given this experience. How we decide to perspectivize this experience is part of what happens when we get here, part of how we decide, how we orient ourselves. That's within our realm of control. If it wasn't, we wouldn't have this perspective. We wouldn't have this understanding. We wouldn't come to this awareness. But so many of us have. We have the ability to transmute and transform, and we're responsible for refining that. To what level we use external things, to what level, like that's all up to us. But we have the ability to shape and to perspectivize what it feels like to be here. And that might feel, again, out of our control. Like, what do you mean? I've been through deep seasons of depression where I thought, this can't be it. Why does this feel like it's beyond my control? I wake up with this feeling and I have to actively work to shift it. It feels like it's been put on me, not that I'm creating it. And it took me some working, reworking, dissolving, transmuting, trusting. It took me process to relieve myself of that weight. It felt like a boulder was on top of me. And I simultaneously had to become the person who gets out and leverages up and underneath that boulder and pushes it off. And so we have the ability. And if people hear that and think, my situation's different, you don't know my situation, I totally respect that. But if anything, I hope that you can take from this is just hope that there's a possibility. If we've seen somebody who's able to do it, know that there's a potentiality then for us. I say potentiality. I'm not saying whether you're going to accomplish it. I don't put a guarantee on anything, but there is the possibility of transmuting and transforming our perspective and transforming our mindset, transforming our internal world. I don't believe any baby is born with deep depression. And I believe that, and that's my belief. Now you can take that on or you can say that's not my belief. That doesn't work for me. I believe different. Wonderful. I know for myself, and we'll talk about this later, that my beliefs create my reality. That's something I've chosen to believe. And so for me, that is not something that feels like it fits my belief system. So for me, if something can be done to us through belief, through exposure, through patterning, if something feels like it's not innate in our innate humanity, then it can be adjusted. If something can be done, it can be undone. The way out is retracing the way in and untangling it for me. So, boundaries created and intuitively felt, allow us to live in alignment and balance. So, there is a big aspect of being internally guided, intuitively guided, that allow us to reperspectivize, to allow us to be that governor. That governor is the internal guidance aspect. And that's why it is crucial for us. And that's why I continue to reinforce the fact that your internal guidance system is there for you. And one day we won't even question this. Like, it won't be like, what is intuition and what's the function of it? And blah, 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 blah. People will be so intimately connected with their intuition. They won't be disconnected from it, that it would never be, it would be like, hey, can you eat my food with your mouth? It would not make sense. So when we use our intuition and we use our inner guidance to create our boundaries, it can allow us to live in alignment and balance, but understanding also it's malleable, it's moving. We captain them. We can also bump up against the boundaries of society. They are there. We see them. We see the consequence, and we are working as a collective. The more conscious we become to have our collective boundaries match what we are learning as a group, the more our shared and collective experience can reflect what we individually feel, right? They eventually our collective boundaries as a group will eventually be set up based on respect and shared humanity. But as we see right now, many are based on what those in power and access have determined. Those with the power and the access have determined, right? Our boundaries currently don't fit all of us. Our societal boundaries don't fit all of us. So when we are not acting like barbarians, let's say, and killing one another, we don't need rules and laws around killing. And again, that's not to say that self-defense, like that's a whole other aspect. But when we get to a society where that's not a thing, we won't need things around it. But there are also laws and rules that are keeping us from flourishing. So it's a bit messy at the moment. I believe this is a transitory system, a transitionary system that needs revising and refining. And thankfully, we are seeing the ways in which it is not working. And we are waking up to the greater revelation of what freedom and sovereignty really means. There are people who are so empowered, excited, and oriented towards changing laws and rules for greater autonomy, freedom, sovereignty, for greater compassion, rules and laws that make sense of based on who we are right now, rules and laws that make sense based on the collective. I believe that when our internal governance is set at a certain level, we don't need that. We are literally self-governing humans that see so far down the line and understand how intimately that we're connected, that harm just really isn't part of our repertoire anymore. And so I see this as a transitionary system. It's not here for always, but it's the meantime. And we're on our way to really understanding and recognizing what freedom and sovereignty really means. And freedom includes the freedom to be hedonistic. Here's the thing. It includes the freedom to be hedonistic, but when we arrive at what is good for us and what is not good for us individually, I don't see the majority choosing hedonism. Like, we might take temporary bouts of, like, man, if you're not allowed to have a certain food growing up and now suddenly you're living on your own, you might gorge on that food for a little bit. And then you might feel what imbalance feels like and you might go, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't need this much of it," unless, we develop an addiction or a fetish for indulging in a certain way, right? But again, we are self-balancing humans. We're self-balancing animals, creatures, whatever you want to call us. So we naturally arrive at what is good for us, what fits our system or what doesn't, when we are not in a state of like disarray, chaos, addiction, coping, crutching. And we're just in a transitionary period where we're coming to this understanding. And when we're linked up to this internal guidance and we're linked up to our intuition in such a way, we just don't do things that aren't sustainable for the best functioning of our system. And when we understand that we are connected in an overall system, we also make choices that are respectful of that too. It's not one or the other. It's easy. Right now, it might not be, but at some point, it's easy to make decisions that align with the freedom of individuals and the freedom of groups. So we start to understand what will be sustainable and favorable. We will find balance. We will find the balance of boundaries that are informative, inclusive, malleable, adaptive. Societies are becoming more and more aware and intelligent, especially so when they are responsive and present and aware and tuned into the humanity of the experience here on earth. when we are tuned into our greater humanity, and that is part of our awareness while we go on living, we make decisions that are not just beneficial for us, but also the whole. And when they're not necessarily beneficial for the whole, we're not going so far off course that we're creating horror. We're creating something that might agitate someone else, maybe. But by this point, they've also developed their internal system so much that they're like, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not that much of a problem. Okay, so that's number 2. We are our own governor, and we are the ones who decide our perspective on our everyday life. So regardless of the hand we're dealt, and not regardless as in it doesn't matter, it completely matters. We all get dealt different hands, we know this. But how we choose to approach that hand, how we choose to walk forward with that hand, how we choose to work with what we've got and create more from that is really the defining factor. There was a teacher I studied with for a while, and Mami Onami, and she talks about how in her Enneagram course, how limitations create style. It's like, yeah, I know. You know what I mean? Like you hear it and you're like, okay. But obviously I was still begrudging limitations at that point. And then I started to realize how profound that actually was. And it settled in and it settled in. And I tell you, it settled 10 layers deep. And I was like, I get it. It ignites a creative force. It creates inspiration. It evolves and evokes inspiration, invention. If we didn't have any limitations, we'd be flooded with the sheer volume of experience that is here on earth. If you were told you could literally do anything in the world you wanted and you thought you were going to do everything overlaying at once, everything everywhere at once, like how flooding would that be to your system? So there are some guardrails so that we can have an experience. There are guardrails such as time released so that people don't necessarily become flooded with everything everywhere all at once. Okay, so number 3, when we are experiencing something that feels off, it is. And there's information and data in that. It's not as simple as you feel guilty, you are guilty, or you feel bad, you are bad. That's over identifying with our feelings and making our feelings as us. Like, I am that feeling. We're not that feeling. It's an experience. It's a feeling we're having. It's more nuanced. And this is where you have to go into this and be both aware of and ask for the revelatory function to show you. Revelatory function, I talk about this in Balanced Masculine Guide sessions. This is your internal Google, but it has your life as the framework. So it's super meaningful for you. It's your internal meme maker, and all the memes make perfect sense for you. So if you're experiencing jealousy, there's something you want that you feel you can't have. You're revealed what you want, and you're also revealed the thread of the fact that you somewhere have told yourself you can't have that thing. And maybe in real time, you can't have it right that moment, but investigate it. There's something there for you to see. It doesn't tell you the whole packet of the story. You have to pull on the thread. Okay, I'm interested. I want to see what this is. Okay, I'll investigate. I'll use my, guidance system to then investigate what does this actually mean. We're only given the light, the dashboard light. And if we keep ignoring the dashboard light, well, why are we surprised when things spin out of control or break down? So if you're feeling defensive of something, let's say, this is another feeling we can have if something feels off. We're feeling defensive of something. Let's say you're feeling defensive of your perspective, your thoughts, right? Somewhere you have told yourself that you're not entitled to that perspective. Somewhere you've believed you're not entitled to having those thoughts and perspective, or having them heard, or taking up space, or sharing them. You are in defense of their legitimacy or existence. So it's less about, are your perspectives and thoughts true, real? Should they be taken on for everybody else? It's not about that. What it's showing you is you feel as though you need to defend your perspective. Why? Why do you feel you need to defend your perspective? Are you not validating your perspective? Do you not feel validated in your perspective? Do you need somebody else externally to validate your perspective for you? What is that pointing to you? What is that pointing to for you? Right? So now, if you share them and they're generalizations or opinions you are trying to pass for others, and they respond with some feedback that, oh, that's not true for me. That's not my perspective. That's not my experience. And then you feel defensive. It may be that you're hitting a boundary of belief in another person, and you're being shown that boundary, and you assume that the boundary is saying that your feeling is not legitimate. This would be a little more complex. This would be more along lines of saying you're expecting somebody else to validate that your experience, your thought is true and real for them also. And that is pointing to you need to validate your own experience as valid for you. And you don't necessarily need someone else to do that for you. Or it might be pointing to something a little complex and showing you an emotional tangle, or sorry, a relational tangle, where perhaps pushing on somebody else's boundary in a relationship is something where you're getting feedback there, where you need to accept first the premise that you are entitled to your unique embodied experience. You are, right? You need to maybe go back to number one. I'm entitled to my unique embodied experience. And then find another way to express, feel, know, or understand what's happening. Maybe you need to look at the fact that, oh, I have a pattern of assuming that other people should take on my perspective. And when they don't, I feel delegitimized in my perspective. Oh, shoot. Okay. There's something here. So when we're experiencing something that feels off, there's information in it, but it's not always completely easy to spot where the offness is and what the offness means. It takes discernment. It takes going inside and using our intuition and asking to see, show me the paper trail, so to speak. Show me the trail of belief that I've created this is rubbing up against and feeling off. Our feelings that don't feel good aren't meant to be like blipped out, like is again like that dashboard light. We're not supposed to like cover it up with a band-aid, pretend it's not there. It's not supposed to feel like garbage forever. We're not supposed to be that's what happens. We get in a habit of ignoring the feeling as it comes as an indication. So then we live with it perpetually because it's not going to not like your check engine light is not going to just like turn off because you don't want to look at it. It's going to keep showing you because because the stability of the car is dependent on you investigating it. And so that's what our feelings are, and we wouldn't feel as though they're constantly there if we were able to know how to investigate, address them, rebalance, and alleviate them. But we're so discomforted by certain feelings because they're chronic and we live with them. We forget that they're meant to come, we're meant to feel them, they're meant to pass. We don't realize that some of them are just perpetually floating around in our system because we've grown accustomed to them. We've grown addicted to them. We've got habits and patterns that bring them up daily for us. Um, we've now made them part of our permanent experience, and they're not meant to be. They're meant to be indications. They're meant to be intuitive hits. They're meant to be part and parcel of our guidance system. So when we ignore a message, it keeps coming like the snooze alarm. Okay. So that one was a big one for me to accept, to be honest. I was like, can I just have great feelings all the time? Like, no. And also, you would have them more often. I was just used to having depression for a long time that I was like, I don't want to feel anything else that feels remotely like that. That was crazy. I don't want so much of it. No thanks. It was deep. Blah. And then I realized, like, oh, okay, well, if I shut that whole system down, then I don't have access to the information that it's giving me. So that's silly. And this is all data. And when I can look at emotions and feelings, feel them, partner with my body, investigate where is this pushing me out of alignment? And also, what data is this giving me to then transform something? It became embraceable. let's say. Okay, number 4. Consequence is a thing. It is a thing. It is a thing. So when I say we're all entitled to our perspective and our experience, we get to govern our perspective. We hold on to something, we wallow in something, we don't forgive ourselves for as long as we choose to not forgive ourselves, right? We're the one holding ourselves in jail for something sometimes. And again, I get that there's real jail and people have actual material consequences of that, but I'm talking about the way we imprison ourselves for doing something and we don't let ourselves out of that and we forget that we've put ourselves in it. And we're actually more in control of this than we think. And so, yes, we can alleviate and relieve things for sure, but that also doesn't mean there aren't going to be consequences. Like, consequences are a thing. Cause and effect is a thing. Take your lived experience and learn this is your consequences, that your consequences will be different than mine. And also learn that there's a collective or archetypal experience of consequence based on context and location. So it's dependent on context, location, personal experience. So it's dependent on the collective and the individual. Like, I have a bodily reaction to certain foods that my husband does not. This is my system's feedback for me, for now. Perhaps for the long term or until I realign something in my body. And we are bringing our awareness into the present, realizing that the feedback becomes unnecessary once we've implemented it, balanced, and restored ourselves. So the consequence will keep showing up while the misalignment, dis-ease, not disease, but disease. Yeah, disease on one level. If we ignore the cause and effect in our body for long enough, it can create disease. Okay. But when we ignore the dis-ease in a situation, we are not at ease. There is something out of ease. When we ignore that, it will keep appearing. And it will need to recruit more and more aspects of you to show this to you if you're ignoring it. So the consequence will keep showing up while the misalignment is in play. The consequence will show up on multiple planes from multiple vantages, reflections, mirrors. It'll show up in multiple places while we are ignoring the data. For example, a hip out of socket, a hip out of alignment can cause all kinds of interesting things. It can cause muscular pain. It can cause our gait to transform slightly, the way we walk, the way we move. We can see in the bottoms of our shoes where we're wearing down certain places. It can create our lower back to have certain pain. It can go to a chiropractor and he can explain to me how my whole alignment can shift based on something like this, right? And then we absorb it in all other areas of our body. We absorb it in our nerves, in our bones, in our ligaments. We start to have this low grade feeling of uncomfortability. It starts to disrupt our sleep. Then that has an impact on, so all of our systems on multiple planes, our multiple functions in our body will start showing this to us. We'll start to look tired because we're not getting sleep. It'll start to affect our appetite. Like, our body is interconnected. So when something is out of alignment, the rest of the body starts to show the misalignment, right? Masculine ignorance of feminine aspect and emotions. Another example. When the feminine has been suppressed for so long in someone, it puts us out of balance. We think the external is the only experience. We forget that we can heal ourselves. We forget that we can dissolve things for ourselves. We forget to connect up with the body in an energetic way. We forget that we can lean back and allow. We can receive. We forget that it's not grind, grind, push, push, go. We don't, get acquainted with our emotions, and soon we get disacquainted with our intuitive guidance system because we are not taking a big aspect of it into consideration, which is our emotions that give us feedback. We're not just here to get feedback from our thoughts and from our environment. We're also here to get feedback from our emotions. And when we shut that system down or ignore it for so long, it demonstrates, it manifests an imbalance. So follow it to its conclusion, if not addressed. Like watch it go all the way down the line. The feminine is considered to be the heart of the situation, to be the feeling, the imagine a world that has lost its heart completely, has prized intelligence, technology, discovery without feeling, conquest without consideration, taken the sacred out of everything. Imagine what kind of world we live in if that goes to its natural conclusion. So, balance is very important. Consequence is here to show us when we are out of balance. Consequences are signals, but we have to do the internal discernment to understand how the various signals can show up. Because we need to come back inside and we need to figure out what it means to our unique body, our unique experience, our individual, right? And it may be mirrored in the collective, but it is intelligence for us to check in with first and then act externally if necessary. Sometimes when we act internally, we do the energetic work, it ends up having a ripple effect outward. Just like the original misalignment can create a cascading effect outward, the internal attunement and realignment can create a cascading effect outward, just the same. Anything that we can create with a negative ripple effect, we can also create a positive ripple effect. It was crazy when pay it forward started to be more of a thing, and buying coffee for the person behind you in line, or like random act of kindness day, and people were like, can you imagine? Like my son was born on random act of kindness day. I love that. But oh my God, so sweet. And then I just thought, but thank God this premise started to like really come back into people's minds. A seed was planted so that people could realize like that's an everyday thing. It's just the positive compounding effect of the ripple effect of a positive thing. Just like there's the ripple effect of a negative thing. Or at least maybe that was my, perspective or lack thereof at the time. Number 5, our design is so intelligent. We are loaded with functions and sensory receptors. This one's dense, okay? I'm just going to just premise it. We're at 5, so at least we're more than halfway there. But our design is so intelligent. We are like this incredible, like Ferrari that has all this functionality, all these sensory receptors. It feels through the hood of the car when the first drop of rain hits. It's got automatic everything, right? We are loaded with functionality. We are just scratching the surface and understanding how intelligent our human design is. Every surface of our body has receptors, and underneath the surface has intelligence streaming through it. We are constantly taking in information and sending out information. We are like a black box, recording all the time. If our eyes are open and we're breathing, I mean, even when our eyes are closed and we're holding our breath, we're still recording. That red root record light, like we're recording, we're like a black box. Okay. We are also like a radio, sending out electromagnetic signals and waves. We are sending out signals and receiving signals all the time on the airwaves. We are an energetic being, absorbing, transmuting, distributing, mixing energies with the world around us. We are a metabolizing machine. We are an advanced alchemical infirmary of emotional and energetic processing. We process food and the elimination of food. We also process emotions or store them. We process energy. We detoxify our cellular systems, our blood, our fluids, our lymph. Like we are an advanced machine. We are an advanced creation, but we're not a machine because we're so much more intelligent. We are like a GPS system. We have moment to moment guidance and awareness. We locate ourselves. We are a compass. We are a self-balancing thing. We have an internal Google. We don't even need Google. If we want to know if something is right for us, we have an internal or And check out your human design because some people have access to that easier than others. But again, once we understand our human design, we can then elevate to, okay, well, then technically I have access to every design. We're not limited to the design that, our horoscope and birth date exclaims we have. We have it all. We are constantly updating with new information and rerouting. We are equipped with memory, vision, perceptual, and conceptual abilities. We don't just perceive the world around us. We don't just vision outside. We vision internally. We can pull up in our imagination something. Pull up the picture of someone in your brain or in your head, in your visionary area, sorry. Pull up a vision of someone who has passed that you love. You can see their face. I could hear my dogs bark. The dog that I had when I was like 1 years old to 13, that passed when I was 13. I can still hear his bark. Like the tone of it. I can hear it. I have that ability. You have that ability to pull up an internal movie. We are equipped with all of this. We have the conceptual abilities. We have the ability to see a blueprint in our head if we wanted to. I'm like skilled at directional abilities. And it's funny because we talk about it, me and my husband, and he's developing his, let's say. And we were talking about how I can see it, and my son, same way. And I say, well, I can sort of elevate above and see the map. I can see how it is. Like I can see the map of where we are and I can see which turns to make. It's like for some reason in my head, I can see the map, the overlay, the top down perspective, the bird's eye. We have this ability. We can receive a gift from ourselves that has its own unique meaning to us, like an inside joke that gets more nuanced and refined with every use. It's already layered. It points to a time and a place and a circumstance. It points to a meaning. It points to meaning of use, why this is even being used right now for this moment. It has meaning to others as well. It has reminders. It's like an Easter egg, as they say, right? It is symbolic, and it is our subconscious's way of sending us an information packet loaded with intel, sending a message to our conscious that has the potential to instantly open up and we get it, or to be dissected and it's rich with meaning, like a Russian nesting doll where you start to open it up and you're like, oh my goodness, this was so nuanced and layered. Just like when you share a gift with your friend or a meme with your friend and it really characterizes something about your relationship or an experience you had, or we have that. That's what's going on sometimes with us when we get an instant, visual sensory impression. We have a blueprint reader and blueprint creator that is also a historical record. This blueprint is overlaid with various elevation, i.e., past lineage, terrain. This is all related to our genetic, social, biological aspects. It shows us information left by our ancestors, information about our environment, information about safety and security, longevity, information about procreativity, about evolution and adaptation, what we can adapt to, how we're adapting. It holds the functionality for growth and change. So it's not just a stagnant blueprint. It's not a blueprint that's set and doesn't move. It's more like a light print because it has the ability to maneuver and change and grow with the ultimate intelligence. And it has a passkey to edit the script, our DNA, our RNA, the concept of epigenetics. We are editing as we go, and we don't have to carry anything. It's already stored within. We all have the capacity to feel into the multiple spheres at once. Through our personality and our heart connection, through our individual and collective experience, we can be existing individually and in a group. We know the difference between our individual and collective experience, and we know where they meet, where they overlap. Our empathy and our compassion allows us to take what we've learned about safety of the tribe and the survival of our species and open it up to trust in our evolution rather than using fear of survival for adaptation and for evolution, which can lead to war and territory disputes, which seems to be our current functionality that we're leaving, that is being upgraded to handle the switchover from surviving to thriving and beyond. Many humans have been developing this prototype for a while. These are people who have instinct and act from an evolved wisdom. They have no need for force or push, and yet they still enjoy being creators in the human experience. They would not cause harm and understand that their internal countenance is creating their path as they go. They are in present time and enjoy an upgraded sense of the first truth, the right to this experience, and the right to create our belief system and the right to create in this experience. They understand that truth, that we have a right to our perspective and our experience. And what did they do with that? They decided, well, I'm going to create something that's going to blow my socks off. I'm going to create an evolved version of this. I'm going to create something elegant, refined, beautiful, so tailored to me, the best version I can. I've done enough searching and I've decided I know I'm powerful. I know I'm creating in this experience. I have faith in my experience. And now where do I go with all that stability? Where do I go with all that knowing, with all that confidence, with all that supporting me? So they understand the intelligent design, they understand how it works, and they understand how to use it. And they're creating the next level of experience for themselves with it. Number 6, we are the bridge. We are literally the bridge between realms. We are literally the bridge between the various energetic, physical bodies. We are the bridge between the DNA, the RNA, the epigenetic experience. We are the bridge between our lineage and the next version of the next generation. We are the bridge. The now is always the bridge. We are the bridge between the transition of societies, of generations. We are the bridge between what we have been and who we are becoming, what we are and what we want next. We are the bridge that frames up our experience. We would be flooded if our minds were responsible for categorizing and being aware of all the information that comes through this intelligent design that we are. That is why the subconscious, which is a more robust processor, takes the information and stores it in cellular memory, in DNA, etc. The theme here is that it is not singularity located in a memory card that can be taken out-ish. It is human consciousness that is spread and woven throughout the entire physical body. This is, again, part of our intelligent design. It is not limited to our physical body, though, this awareness, this consciousness, this memory processing. Actually, it's also outside of us, within our energetic field. We can feel when something comes in the room, when someone's standing behind us, when someone's glaring at us. And we're also kind of like a computer with hardware and software. It's interesting that we've developed computers to be the way they are because they've given us a language to now describe our system. Very interesting. So as I say, we're kind of like a computer in the hardware software aspect, but we're not like a computer in that the hardware and software aren't separate. They're braided together, sort of like a homogeneous mixture or solution. Like once we are put together in form, we operate as a unified form. Our consciousness is everywhere. We don't just have our consciousness located in one singular spot. It's all throughout. Like the information is in our blood, it's in our bones, it's in our cells. Our DNA is everywhere. It's in our nails that get clipped off. So it can be dissected, or pieces extracted, like how we can extract stem cells or DNA or eggs or pieces. But the soul is complex and it's not isolated or extracted, which is the part that is part of the magic. So We all have this functionality and information being recorded and processed. And what we are aware of is that we are conscious. Our consciousness can expand and we get more of an in-depth view of the functions at play. So if we can stretch our consciousness, we get the ability to see a little bit more. If we can go into the seat of the observer, or if we can be more aware, we get to take a glimpse underneath what's going on and see a little bit more. And if as we stretch our conscious awareness, we can understand it a little bit more. And it can be overwhelming. But until we assimilate to that level of conscious awareness, it's the functions aren't fully at our fingertips yet. So the more we can sit with and ask these questions and understand it and look at it and understand how it all interrelates and see the functionality, um, it's sort of going to feel soupy. It's sort of going to feel all mixed up. But at a certain point, we assimilate that level of conscious awareness. So while being this awareness, we still need to function in our human groups and our human environment, which is where the personality and the identity come in and our meaning making function. We think to be able to perform, know, and observe. We interact through our personality function. Some people think personality, ego, this is like get rid of it through the New Age spiritual community, but this is a part of our design. It's functioning for us. It's like as we grow our consciousness, it seems as though we grow our capacity to make choice, right? To release autopilot and habit, to change, to adapt, to rewrite, to refine our programming, and to choose our reality through creation. But we do this partly through our identity, partly through the personality, partly through the mind aspect. We get the responsibility and the independence of choice, the independence in choice that is afforded by choice through the capacity and awareness of that choice. When we feel overwhelmed, the process slows a little bit to allow our system to not be flooded or short circuited. We can often experience burnout when we don't listen to our system's calls and warnings and reflections. We can burn out when we are acting or being counterintuitive to our system's optimal performance or being in relation to others in a way that is draining or harmful. So when we're relating to others, doing things that are harmful to our system, eventually we do reach a burnout. So as we show more responsibility and stewardship, and this isn't governed by someone else, it's that as you start to take control in the way that is sustainable and makes sense through your calmness and your awareness and your presence and your consciousness, more is revealed. And naturally, then as you find balance and take more initiative, you automatically take up more consciousness in your system. And then you learn the functionality. And then you can take command more fully and you begin to create from there. And this is when we can juggle multiple perspectives, multiple lenses, multiple vantages, and multiple systems at the same time. We feel less flooded and we trust the intelligent design to do what it is meant to do naturally. We trust the health of our system and we see that any imbalance and dis-ease or disease is an indication for realignment or change. When operating at this level of awareness, we don't generally spiral out into an external locus of control or into external governance. We are internally governed. This perspective, when embodied, changes the whole dimensional experience, and there becomes a new baseline experience that is foundational. You don't go back into like ignorance around your creative capacity once you reach this awareness. You realize we just keep going and expanding and creating. Okay, so number 7, our beliefs create our reality. Yes, they do. Okay, but I know that sounds cumbersome. And so I'm going to try to universalize / individualize this information. This is where we can take from the last few points and integrate it with our mind. This is the equalizing quality. The fact that we create our beliefs, create our reality, like we create our reality. This is the equalizing quality, the objective qualifier, right? Because what else is the same about all of us? Our bodies aren't all the same, right? Even what we come in with in terms of like arms and legs and digits. Like our bodies aren't all the same. Our design is the same to a degree, but the objective experience is that you have a piece of universal consciousness, a function of universal consciousness inside. That's the equalizing factor. We all have this piece of universal consciousness. We all have this spark. We all have this animation. We are alive. We are online, so to speak. We are all to varying degrees online, here, alive, eyes open. We all have this, and this is objective for all. What we do with that aliveness, life, back to part 1, point 1, is up to us. So we have an intelligent interface where we direct ourselves and the body form, where we direct the body from. The form of the body we direct from in this interface. And we also communicate with this interface. The personality, the identity is part of this interface. Okay. This is different from the intelligence that regulates the heart. That's still part of the intelligence, right? The heart, the body temperature, our endocrine system, the intelligence that grows our skin, our hair, our nails, etc. Like it's different from that, but that's also part of it. This is the system that is connected to our self-concept, right? Our belief creating our reality. This is the part that's related to our self-concept, how we operate in our external and internal worlds. This is how we make meaning of our life, our goals. This is our drive, our desires, how we feel a desire in our body. We feel something light up when we think a certain thought. We feel excited. So we're presented with some stimulation, external, internal, mental, whatever it is, like a feeling or a picture or a thing, right? And we're like, ooh, something lights up. We want that. We've identified that feeling as desire. Our feeling sends us on a bit of a, okay, something has got our attention. Something is on our radar. We want this perhaps, right? And it means something to us. And it might not mean the same thing to someone else, right? So this is that system. Okay. This is how we make meaning of our life. This is why our goals are our goals. And there are some collective overarching goals that a lot of people subscribe to. Yes, absolutely, because we're human beings and we're related, and our basic nature is, in my belief, love. And then we have these drives and desires, and then how we go out into the world, how we do, how we be, right? And this is based on a set of beliefs, how we know what we know, and how we act based on that. For those who understand this perspective well, they can see in others roughly what they believe by how they act, by what they do with their time and energy, by what they choose to talk about when they get time to talk to you, by what they choose to do, right? It's evident when somebody can tell you a million things about themselves. What they choose to tell you is something that seems to be in the forefront. And that might change day to day when you catch them, what's happened before. But there's a certain amount of that you can extrapolate, you can tell is based on their belief systems. You can tell by their beliefs what they allow for themselves, right? So you can read this if you're skilled at this. So what you believe you can do, have, and be is demonstrated by what you allow yourself to do, have, and be, but not to the degree that like I believe that, let's say I could have anything in the world, but I'm not gonna have everything in the world. Do you know? Like it's kind of like that. It it is based on what you believe you can have, do, and be. You show that based on how you show up and what you allow yourself to do, have, and be. But it's not limited to that. It's not all that, but it can be a great indication. And this is where we get a little tangled and tussled with the external. But remember, we are all entitled to our experience. We are all entitled to how we perspectivize what we perceive. We create our reality. And if we perceive our reality to be a steaming pile of shit, it will likely feel like a steaming pile of shit. So if we have shit circumstance, when we are present and aware, we perspectivize this. We perceive this. We are aware in the moment we can create a shift, right? So if we have a shit circumstance, but we are present, we are aware, we believe in our ability to create a shift for ourselves, we believe we can change things, we can create a shift, right? Prolonged shit circumstance can put our body into a place of dis-ease or unrest. And we don't necessarily have the energy and capacity to be in that visionary state, to be creative, to be playful, to be planful, right? We can be. We have that potential. We have that ability. Everybody has that ability, but it requires a certain level of wisdom, knowingness, trust, belief that you can, or captaining that has been developed or innately found in us. Our beliefs are like the governors on how we will experience the influx of data, energy, and life that is around us. So, on a really, everyday mundane level, yes, our beliefs create our reality. And that can seem like, what do you mean? But like, sit with it, honestly. Let it have some time. If it's not something you can get behind, leave it. But if you want to get behind it, sit with it. It will show you what that means. And sometimes things don't mean what we think it means. Like, I believe I can have a puppy appear in my hand right now. Like, it's not like that. That's not what this is, right? But your belief system, whew, can be part of what you even believe is possible, right? And we use our belief system to categorize and create our experience. Otherwise, there's just so much option. There's so much around us. As I said earlier, we could be flooded with the reality of what is actually going on. And as I said, our beliefs are like governors. They're like the guardrails. They're like but not to control necessarily. They can, but they're the governors on how we will experience the influx of data and energy and life that is around us so that we aren't in a state of paralyzation based on the sheer amount of goings onness of what is the all of the experience. Our beliefs are what we use as a scaffolding to climb the energetic ladder of our experience and reach new vistas, to cultivate our area of experience, to create our masterpiece. Our beliefs help us do that. That's their tool. Our programming based on our beliefs helps us operationalize that every day. But when we first find out about programming, we're like, oh my God, programming is horrible. The matrix is horrible. We can build our own personal matrix of how we want to achieve what we want to achieve. And just imagine that as being the grid you climb to get to where from one point to another point. Imagine, you can only move on a grid like snakes and ladders, like up and over and up and over, like or at least how you get yourself there is a grid, right? Some people can just think, I'm going to jump from spot A to spot B. Wonderful. And spot B is diagonal and over to the left and like way over there. And I can just, boom, I'm there. Sure. For some of us, we need scaffolding, we need structure, we need a grid of how to get there. Okay. So the belief system is the way we can use intermittent footholds to get there. So we can create our masterpiece. As I said, our life is our masterpiece. And first and foremost, we have to have a foundation of what we believe is even possible for a masterpiece. If you were told you only get crayons and brown craft paper, oh, okay. But then what if you find out you can literally use anything you want and you can make anything you want? And it can be 3D, it can be poetic, it can be conceptual, it can be with light. It doesn't even have to be physical. Oh my gosh. Well, doesn't that open up everything for you? And then we're almost flooded with choice, right? When we are not aware of our belief systems, they can be like a fence that keeps us safe or stuck in line, or prisoned. Some beliefs of what we can and can't have, or if something is even possible for us, something that's not even in our perspective, worldview, purview, or realm of reality, you might not even know you can create unless you really develop your internal guidance system that you trust, and it can lead you out the labyrinth and into the vast oceans of all that is. But sometimes when you come out of a confined space or a labyrinth or a maze and you go into open field, open expansion, whatever you want is yours. It's like, what do you mean? I need something to hold to. Do you know? Like standing at the edge of the top of a tower or standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and being like, "Oh, that space, holy smokes. It's huge." So, sometimes you need something to frame up your experience because the limitlessness can be jarring and it can feel just as unsafe as being boxed in. So that's why our systems are so intelligent. We navigate pure choice and pure awareness once we leave the confines of our known reality, which is what we've been experiencing up until the point where we become aware of the limitlessness. Creation is something that requires a lot of energy because when you come to the realization of limitlessness and you realize, oh, I could be doing what I could be making more choices for what I want, you come up against the current of what you've already been creating, or you come up against the societal current of what's appropriate or right. This is why it's so exciting and liberating to see people who have created their own path because they are a testament to the fact that you can do it. And they say it's hard work because you're going against a current. You're going counter to your own current, or you're going counter to what people's expectations were of you, or you have to create a whole new path entirely and it's new. And things that are new can sometimes feel unknown. And we spend a lot of time feeling grounded. Sometimes we spend a lot of energy making sure we feel safe in that. But if you trust it, then you don't spend the same amount of energy required to feel like stable. You just like, it's always new, it's always changing. And there are some people you meet that are just so, they ride the wave of change like it's the joy of their life. I believe we can cultivate that more and more. So creation is something that requires energy, belief, faith, courage, stamina, also lightheartedness, holding the reins lightly while not taking things too seriously, and also being passionate and compassionate and driven. It's like literally the chariot holding two paradoxical reins that create the perfect tension of oppositional forces, and then you're off. And so that's the potential, and that's what our belief systems can help us do. Okay. 8. The journey is internal and has some archetypal markers. It has some symbolism, but is unique to you. Your internal world becomes just as relevant and loud and robust as your external world. And when you get to that point, you realize you are building the capacity and awareness to hold both without splitting this whole time. You had to practice being in tune with your internal world and your creative capacity while also still being able to like function, feed yourself, brush your teeth, brush your hair, get yourself dressed, go out and get the things you need, do the things in the external world that you need to do, right? And in the beginning, when it takes so much effort to just be in your external world, it's not like we have a ton of energy to then expend on exploring the internal world. Like sometimes it's the extra energy you have left is about stabilizing, which I totally get. And then once you've stabilized, oh, and you allow yourself to explore this inner world and you allow yourself to see, okay, wait, what am I really? And what is the functionality of this human vessel, body, soul, experience, identity? Like, what is this? You start to recognize and realize and remember what already feels like internal knowledge. And that's when things get really interesting. This is when things feel like a game, when we really start to lean into like metaphor, analogy, symbolism, and we really start to locate ourselves in relation to one another. And then it's like you get a whole new lease on life and you feel so excited to just go and run and experience. And that's like when I say I'm just happy to be here. Like those are reverent moments of like me remembering what a gift it is to be here. And if you took all the pressure off, the judging off, the expectation, the self, control, the self, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Like if you just backed off enough to just feel the experience flood in a little bit and also work with it, you start to really appreciate Well, then what's the point of being here if I'm here? If I can have any experience I'm entitled to experience whatever way I want. What do I create then? What do I do then? What does my life mean for me then? If the rules that I've been accustomed to or grown up with were rules made by other people's opinions and perspectives, and perhaps not revised for a very long time, or the ways that people thought it was best to do things, and bless them and thank you for sharing that was the best way at the time that you know how to do things or knew how to do things. Wonderful. But now that I understand I'm completely empowered to create my own way, what would I do? What would I want? Would I even want half the stuff I thought I wanted? That's the real fun experience. And in the Balanced Masculine guide sessions, we sort of talk about like how do you shift these beliefs? How do you dissolve old ones? How do you create new habits and patterns? And how do you connect up with that version of you that is curated, refined, and chosen? And not curated and refined and chosen like it's some sociopathic, you know, persona, but more from the perspective of I know what truly feels right. And I also know what I want to experience. And I get to choose the things that were previously chosen for me before I was aware I had a choice. And I see so many people already doing this so incredibly, so flamboyantly, so true to them, so in whatever way floats their boat. And I just love seeing that. Like, my heart goes out to everybody for the love of humanity, all of humanity. But it makes me so enlivened to see people who are so themselves in their la freak, walking their freak flag and letting themselves just be, giving themselves permission to be fully them. And just like the layers of judgment that just falls off because they just experience life from such a vantage that they're here and they've got a thirst for it and they're quenching that thirst as they go. And it's just like, it's a real cool thing. It's a real wonderful thing. So, those are the truths that have settled in my purview in a way that I could explain them, in a way that I could articulate them, in a way that at a time where I felt like I wanted to. I appreciate you listening as always. And ooh, now that this little trilogy is complete, the harmonized human, the balanced masculine, the embodied feminine or feminine flow, whatever that ends up being, um, and I'll make some purchasable guide sessions that are more in depth for these. But now that this is sort of moving forward, I wonder what the next episodes will be. Who knows? I'm excited. If anybody has any suggestions, any questions, reach out. I'm on Instagram at Femist. I'm on TikTok. Um, yeah, reach out. Let me know if there's something you want to have discussed, and I'd be happy to do so. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.